This Israel report is brought to you by the Blue Agency. Your Israel property is in good hands. Owning properties in Israel can be a great investment, but challenging to manage if you're based abroad. The Blue Agency will manage every aspect of your property, finding and vetting tenants, maintaining your property and getting it rental ready, negotiating contracts and collecting rentals, reporting back to you regularly. The Blue Agency has built a reputation for trust and confidentiality over 20 years. The Blue Agency, your Israel property is in good hands. Contact us at www.theblueagency.com.
The Israel Report for the latest news and insights with Anthony Reich.
Anthony Reich, Boker Tov, good morning. Hope you are well.
Boker Tov. I hope that Mukundi has been playing the new Boy George song.
We have.
Because,
We've been.
It's just amazing.
It really is.
It's really amazing.
We played it at 7 o'clock, and then, I'm sorry, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I have to, is we had to introduce Mukundi to Karma Chameleon. No, it's embarrassing, okay. Mukundi. It is. Okay. It is embarrassing.
I won't comment about that, Howard. You and I seem to be embarrassing ourselves more than anything else. Yeah, I know it. But yeah, I mean, Boy George, obviously an icon going back many, many years, even to the days when Howard and I were once young, and we remember Karma Chameleon. A great friend to the Jewish community in London. He was born and raised in the North London area, where he befriended a lot of Jews and has been involved in the music industry in the UK. Obviously, many Jews involved there as well, but a really great friend to Israel. And, you know, of the last 3 years, we've really seen people's true colors. And Boy George's true colors have come through amazingly. He's visited Israel. He's been outspoken. He's been cancelled, and he's been criticized from some of his music industry friends. And now he's gone that one step further. Not only has he been so public in supporting the Jewish community in the UK, but Israel in general, in light of this war, and come out against anti-Semitism. But what a great song. And, you know, I would encourage people to support the song and to support him, because he definitely has been a great friend of ours. Just on a completely different story, I saw in social media the day before yesterday, I think that, or maybe even yesterday, that Rom Braslavsky, who was captive in Gaza for more than 2 years, finally wrote the last letter of the Sefer Torah, of the Torah scroll, that had been completely written while he was in captivity, except for the last letter. And they waited. The Torah scroll was written relatively quickly, and it was done, you know, in order to bring some spirituality, to try to pray and to do some deeds of kindness in order to encourage Rom's release, and of course the other hostages as well. And finally, Rom got together with the person who was the scribe who wrote the Torah scroll, and he added that last remaining letter to complete the entire Torah scroll. And I think that's an incredible story, that he was spared to be able to add that last letter, which is exactly what everybody had in mind when that Torah scroll was written, that he would be there, come back and write that last letter. And it did happen.
Incredible. Unbelievable. Prime Minister Netanyahu has arrived in Washington for his meeting with President Trump, which is to take place later today. What do we know about the agenda?
Not a great deal is the real answer, because, you know, there is so much fake news surrounding and swirling around his visit and what is to be discussed. I have little doubt, of course, that Iran will be very much first and foremost on the agenda. We understand that the Prime Minister has brought additional evidence of a nuclear program advancement in Iran. I'm not sure that President Trump really needs to be convinced about this. I don't know whether, you know, the Prime Minister needs to bring our own intelligence pictures to prove to Trump that the Iranians have really recovered much more quickly than we would have anticipated from the damage that was caused to their nuclear program. And the issue is, of course, now that it's really out there in the open and there is really very little conflict or dialogue on the issue of the nuclear program. I mean, I know there are talks going on in the background between the US and Iran, and President Trump yesterday again said, oh, we're talking and it's going very well, and Iran are begging us to allow the Straits of Hormuz to operate freely and to stop the embargo. And, you know, we have to all take his statements with the relevant pinch of salt that we all know we need to use when listening to some of the comments that he makes. We know that there are discussions, but on the issue of the nuclear program, whereas the previous Obama a deal that he struck with the Iranian regime at the time did envisage some oversight of their nuclear program through the nuclear watchdog of the United Nations. There were indeed some visits and some oversight of the Iranian nuclear program at some point, but now that everything has kind of come out in this way during the course of the war, I cannot see any possible cooperation on the issue of the nuclear front. And so I think Iran have sort of been somewhat emboldened by the war and the fact that we all know that they have this nuclear program, even though they continue to talk about the fact that it's really for civilian use rather than military use. And we know that when the International Atomic Energy Agency was overseeing during the period of the Obama administration and subsequent to that through the Biden administration, they were supposedly overseeing the nuclear program. But we know that there was a lot that was going on in the background, a lot that they weren't given access to. So all of that now has reached the situation where I don't think that the International Atomic Energy Agency will have any access to the Iranian nuclear facility whatsoever. I don't think that Iran will try to hide what it's doing. I think it's really all out there in the open. I think the nature of this beast has really changed a lot, and they are very busy at the moment recovering the damage that was done during the bombings that Israel carried out and the United States also carried out against its nuclear program. So this is a very worrying situation. And I suspect that if, you know, the conflict kind of ends as it is today, that there will be a much more serious nuclear threat than was the case before the war. That's my assessment. I think that instead of the war weakening their nuclear capability, I think it strengthened their resolve to really develop this. And that, of course, is extremely worrying for us, and it should be worrying for all people in Europe and the United States and Western countries should all be worried about this. So I think that will certainly be on the agenda. Interestingly, I think that Turkey is also going to be on the agenda, and particularly the United States' agreement to supply Turkey with these F-35 fighters, because the interests with Turkey are not the same. The United States sees Turkey as a NATO ally, as an important location for watching what's going on in Russia in particular and further towards the east of Turkey. Israel looks at Turkey as part of the Iranian axis. The United States, for some reason, doesn't quite see it like that. And I think it's all got to do with this dilemma that they have with Turkey being a member of NATO and Turkey having such good access to be able to see what's going on in Russia and also to potentially prevent the overspill of Russian interests towards Western Europe and ultimately towards the United States. So Turkey is definitely a point of contention, of lack of agreement between the United States and Israel, and I have little doubt that Prime Minister Netanyahu will want to be talking about what's going down in Turkey and to try somehow to convince President Trump not to sell those F-35 fighters. I don't think that's necessarily going to succeed. President Trump has already commented on this, saying nobody is going to tell me what to do when asked about selling these F-35 fighters to Turkey. So that's clearly a bone of contention. And to be fair, I mean, Turkey is a real threat to Israel. Turkey is part of the Iranian axis. Turkey is a relatively strong power, a massive location, strategically located. and strategically a part of NATO, which makes all of this extremely complicated for Israel in the way that it will choose to deal with Turkey. So it's not very clear exactly what Turkey is going to land up looking like with the strategy against Turkey. But I think we're going to talk a lot about Turkey in the coming months because I think Turkey is definitely a major issue. But interestingly, this is the 8th meeting that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu are holding during Trump's current term. 8 meetings, which is, I think, Trump has been in office for less than 2 years. So that is a very high frequency.
That's incredible.
And I believe that it's the one leader that Trump has met more than any other leader during his current term. Of course, there were briefings about hostage releases and things like that when Trump first came into office. So 8 meetings, I think, is a lot. We're expecting the meeting to take place at around 11 o'clock Washington time. So in Israel, that'll be 6 o'clock your time. I think it'll be 5 o'clock. And then after that, Prime Minister Netanyahu is due to attend the funeral of the Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who died recently and who was really one of Israel's greatest friends. And in many interesting things coming out about Lindsey Graham, even after his death, about his involvement in the Middle East and some of the comments that he made. So we will be watching to see what comes out of Prime Minister Netanyahu's meeting with President Trump. But I suspect the reports will be very benign, low-key.
So that's what I keep wondering is why the visit? I mean, yes, we've got the funeral of Senator Lindsey Graham, but it wouldn't have been unreasonable if Netanyahu didn't travel there. I keep trying to figure out why he would need to sit face-to-face with Trump. And, from what I understand, they speak all the time. They could continue to speak. I have no doubt they've got secure lines. Why is it, do you think, that they actually need to sit together?
Well, I think there are two potential arguments or two potential answers to that question. The first of which is super high security relating to further conflict with Iran. Now, we have seen in the past that when things have escalated, it has generally come with a face-to-face meeting between these two leaders. So this kind of mirrors things that have happened before with regard to the Iranian axis and exactly what's going on with the conflict of Iran. So we might interpret this to mean this is the moment when the next round of conflict will be decided and how it will be conducted. The cynical view is that Prime Minister Netanyahu is desperate for photo opportunities ahead of the upcoming election, and that he would fly to the moon if it was not required in order to have a photo opportunity with President Trump, which he feels will promote his chances in the election. So there are two different views. I suspect both of them have some relevance.
Yeah, they probably do. And we'll, I guess, I'm not sure if we will ever really know, as you've said, the full extent of it. The Israeli cabinet has approved the introduction of the International Stabilization Force into Gaza. What does this mean practically?
Well, I think this is a very significant moment because, if we kind of summarize where we are with Gaza right now, Israel has implemented what's known as the yellow line in Gaza, which means that they've kept a lot of Gazan territory under the control of the IDF in order, to destroy the terror infrastructure that was there right along Israel's border. And the yellow line effectively is kind of a line that almost tracks the border of Gaza along the south, along the east, and along the north. But it's just has reduced the Gazan territory significantly. And current estimates say that something like 70% of Gaza is currently under the control of the IDF within that yellow line area, which means that 2 million Gazans or thereabouts are currently located in 30% of what was Gaza previous to this war, 30% of that territory. And that 30% is currently still very much under Hamas control. And we know that Hamas have not been willing to cooperate with the whole disarmament agreement, which was part of the ceasefire agreement that was reached with President Trump. And one of the provisions of the agreement and also the responsibilities of this Board of Peace is the International Stabilization Force, which is supposed to be a force with foreign soldiers who come along to police what's going on in Gaza. So I think this is a significant moment that the Israeli cabinet have said we need the stabilization force in order somehow to weaken Hamas within their 30% zone that is currently under their control, and hopefully to disarm them, although I think that is perhaps a step right now that may be a little too far.
Anthony Reich, that is where we leave it. Thank you as always for the Israel Report. We'll catch you tomorrow morning at 7:45. It is 8 o'clock.
That Israel Report was brought to you by the Blue Agency. Your Israel property is in good hands. Owning properties in Israel can be a great investment, but challenging to manage if you're based abroad. The Blue Agency will manage every aspect of your property, finding and vetting tenants, maintaining your property and getting it rental ready, negotiating contracts and collecting rentals, reporting back to you regularly. The Blue Agency has built a reputation for trust and confidentiality over 20 years. The Blue Agency, your Israel property is in good hands. Contact us at www.theblueagency.com.